So I'd like to call to order the 247th meeting of the Equal Employment Practices Commission, today, March 9th, 2023. First order of business is roll call of commissioners. Executive Director Jean Victor, can you please call the commissioner roll call?
Yes. Chair and Commissioner Aldrin Bonilla.
Present.
Vice Chair and Commissioner Elaine Reese.
Present.
Commissioner Manaska Alcantara. Commissioner Nicole Yearwood.
Present.
And Commissioner Ngozi Okaro.
Present. We have quorum. Thank you. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes for January 26, 2023? We have a motion to approve the minutes by Commissioner Reese. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Yearwood. Any discussion? Any corrections, final amendment, discussion? Hearing none, we call a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Abstentions, hearing none, the motion passes. The next order of business is, well, we have a change in the order of the agenda that we received from the previous email. So in this one, our next order of business is the approval of resolutions for compliance. And if I'm not mistaken, we have 16 resolutions, all directionally in favor, and then we have a in compliance, and then we have another section for determination of non-compliance resolution for vote, for a separate vote. I'll turn it over to our general counsel and the compliance, Jennifer.
Okay. Yes, today we have 16 resolutions for compliance. They are all from the 2022 annual plan. As we all know, we kind of had a late start last year, so we didn't get to wrap them up last year. So we are wrapping them up this year. We're up to 22 by the second meeting of the year, which is great if you're looking at it from try to get to 30 by the end of the year, but I do think we'll get to double. So I'm happy with the pace that we're going. We have about 10 agencies left and they should be wrapped up by the end of April, the latest. So those are the 16. I don't know if you want me to read them out or if you want to just vote on them as a bundle.
Yeah, we could vote on them as a bundle, but if you could just give context of how they are all Bronx, how they're all community boards.
Actually, I need to recuse myself from some,
Yes.
Okay.
so.
When it's time for vote, you could just.
Okay.
Yes, so we have several Bronx community boards, number 5, 1, 2, 12, 6, 10, 11, 8, 7, 3. Oh, excuse me, not 3. 3 was on last meeting. We have 2 Staten Island community boards, that's 1 and 3. As well as the Campaign Finance Board, Office of Collective Bargaining, Business Integrity Commission, Financial Information Services Agency, otherwise known as FISA.
I move that they all be approved. I move that they all be approved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve all 16 resolutions. Yes, and then do we have a second? Second, Chair Farrell, we have a second. Now, discussion. As part of discussion, Commissioner Yearwood is recusing herself from a number of resolutions. Can you identify which resolutions those are for the record?
I'm gonna start with 12, Bronx
Number
Community,
12?
Bronx Community Board 12,
Okay. Bronx
Okay.
Community Board.
which is, okay, so number 6, number 9, number 10, and okay, yeah, I'm good with the rest.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, a vote in any direction on this motion for Commissioner Yearwood would.
I want to
include
amend
from
my
6,
motion.
8, 6, 9, and 10.
I want to amend my motion.
Yes.
Let us vote on all of them except for 6, 9, and 10. So I'm amending.
What, so you want to go for 6, 9, and 10 separate?
No, I didn't say 12.
Okay.
Either way.
You see any issue with it? So, we have a motion to vote on resolutions 1 to 16, with the exception of 6, 9, and 10. All in favor, say aye. Well, we have a second to the motion. Commissioner Carver, your motion's those seconded for the amendment. Then we have a vote. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Nay, hearing none, the motion passes.
And I move that we vote on
6 and 9.
6, 9, and 10, resolution 6, 9, and 10.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Carver. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Recusal.
Yes,
Recusal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, having a majority of the vote eligible to vote on this, the motion passes.
Right.
Next, we have a determination of non-compliance resolution vote. Resolution for community board. Now,
Yes.
Jennifer Shaw, we would like to get more context or elaboration on this.
Sure. So Bronx Community Board 9 was audited and their compliance monitoring period ended in January 31st. We've been in contact with them throughout the entire compliance monitoring period, all of December, January, sending like emails 2 to 3 times a week. We tried calling, the voicemail was full, they had moved offices, so it was difficult to reach them in any other way but email. We were assured that we would get our documents by January 31st. We didn't get anything. They didn't respond to our preliminary, they didn't respond to our final, and they had corrective actions for every single standard. So the compliance monitoring period ended and I reached out and I was assured that we would get something by February 17th. That date came and went, still nothing. I reached out again. I was told that they would get us to it by March 3rd, which was last Friday. And that date came and went and we have not received anything. I have to point out that all the communications were coming from the district manager. The chair did not respond to my emails at all. And so I am recommending that we issue them a determination of noncompliance and then ask them meaning the chair and the district manager, to appear before the board at the next meeting, which is scheduled currently for April 20th, to explain why they were not able to participate meaningfully in our audit and what they plan to do to rectify their areas of noncompliance.
And if they don't do that, we have no alternative but to go to the borough
Commissioner Reese?
president. And if they don't do that, we have no alternative but to go to the press. I guess we go to the mayor first.
I'd just like to remind people this is open session, open meeting. So just be mindful of that, discussing strategy of how to proceed in terms of compliance issues. So, Commissioner Carroll?
So, thank you for that information. Just wondering, we'll request that the chair and the district manager come to the next meeting. Would the borough president or whomever in the borough president's office is responsible, but ultimately the borough president, be copied? Like, will they know what's going on?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And through my emails, after compliance monitoring ended in January, the emails that I sent to the chair and the district manager, I also copied the borough president's EEO officer, and I copied their community affairs director so that they were kept in the loop. And also that way, if they needed some sort of assistance that we couldn't provide, then maybe they would be able to assist during that time period. And so they've been copied on my emails to the chair and the district manager.
Okay.
And I also copied, I think on the last email, the other person who happens to be in the district office. I think it's a community associate. So basically everybody in that office, I was just copying on that email. So I was hoping to get a response.
Commissioner Yearwood?
Yes, were the local city council members copied also, because they actually are responsible for some of the appointments. They make so how the community board members are appointed, council members recommend half to the borough president. So even though the borough president technically makes all of the appointments, half of those members are recommended by the council members that cover those districts.
I did not copy them or the actual borough president on the email communications. We've never had an issue like this with the community board before. It's really, we understand that they don't have an EEO officer, that they're kind of dependent on the borough president's EEO office for their program. So we make it a very minimal amount, basically distribution of policies, telling people who to contact if you have a problem or want to request a reasonable accommodation, making sure that everyone's trained and making sure that if they're advertising for jobs that they're including the city's diversity statement. That's really the extent of it. So it's not a very onerous thing that we're asking of them. But I can include in the letter that we send to the chair and the district manager asking them, requesting them to appear. We can copy, we're already copying the borough president. We can copy the city council members if you'd like.
Commissioner Reese?
Have you gotten any response at all from the people you've copied? So you sent
No.
one letter saying, essentially extending the term, and then you sent a second notice. And in neither case has anybody picked up the phone or sent you an email who's been copied saying, or indicating that they were aware or doing anything.
No, we did not. And the chair didn't respond to my emails either, just the district manager.
I have, I guess, several suggestions, one of which that you call the borough president's CEO officer to see, before you send the letter, to see whether or not they are aware of what's going on or cognizant or have any suggestions as to how to manage it.
I will definitely do that. I am not 100% because nobody can be certain, but I'm pretty sure they're aware because we are in contact regularly with that EEO officer because we are auditing, we're wrapping up our audit of the Bronx Borough President's Office. So we've been in regular contact with their EEO officer, at least on the weekly. So, and they know that we've been auditing the community boards because they've been getting some requests for training certificates, et cetera. So do I know that she's there, that she's necessarily aware of this particular circumstance? I don't have any certainty, but I'm pretty sure that she knows what is going on.
She may have some suggestions as to how to manage it.
Okay.
Beyond what we're doing without clear knowledge of the personalities. I do agree that the council member may also be aware and have some suggestions on how to manage it. And then I'm back to where I was before, which is that the borough president clearly, and to the extent that this becomes public, that won't look good for anybody.
So just so I'm clear, before you vote on the resolution, the board would like me to copy the council members as well as the borough president on the letter with the non-determination in it that is telling the community board they have to appear at the next meeting? Is that something we want?
Yeah.
From 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know that the language used here, some say asks, some say requests.
We're compelling them.
You're compelling them.
Yeah.
The language consistent with the charter.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and would there be an in-person and remote option or you're only in person?
Whichever the board prefers.
In person.
Or have
For a meeting,
yeah, to compel them
To come to our next
to
meeting.
come to our next meeting?
Sure. In person.
in person. Okay, in person.
But before that, before the letter goes out, you're gonna reach out to the EEO officer in the Bronx Borough President's Office to see whether or not there is any insight into how to manage this problem.
Okay, if I do that, does that change the sending of the determination of non-compliance?
Depends on what is said.
I think
Well, then that's what you're voting on today,
Yeah, no,
though.
yeah, I think you should just send it because that's what we're voting on. And the fact that 10 other Bronx community boards have no problem being in compliance,
That's correct.
also speaks volumes to
Yes.
this outlier. So I think we're beyond the point of getting enough time and leniency in regards to this board submitting. Fine, so you should just go ahead with calling them before us.
But maybe
You can in the letter, continue to copy
They are.
the people that you're copying, maybe you could still make the phone calls to the borough president's office, letting them know that they've been compelled to appear before us, and maybe that has some meaning for the office, but I think we should just move forward with this community. Because they haven't communicated any disagreements with any aspects of this, right?
No.
Because I know sometimes people do that. So yes, so everybody's okay with the resolution that we're voting on?
Yes.
Do we have a motion?
I'm recusing myself.
motions, Commissioner Hill seconds. All in
Wait,
favor?
No, I'm
Commissioner
recusing
Yearwood.
myself from nine.
Oh, from this one, oh,
Yes,
from
from
nine?
this one, yep.
Okay,
Okay, so we have a motion.
we have a motion to approve the determination of non-compliance with resolution vote. And that motion triggers your letter to community board in relation to appearing before us
Yes,
for matters dealing with the non-compliance.
yes. And that,
Elaine,
that letter would be copying the borough president, their EEO officer, their community affairs director, as well as the council members for District 9, Community Board 9.
Correct.
Okay, is that,
That's the motion.
we still need a second. though.
Yeah, Commissioner
Yeah, sorry.
O'Connell, you're still motioning?
Yeah.
Approval amendment?
Mhm.
Okay, I second the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? One opposed, all abstentions? One abstention. So I believe the motion, if it's a tie, the motion passes, the motion declined.
I don't think it's a
Not as
tie.
high, it's a, it passes 2 to 1 and 1 is it?
Yeah.
is it now
Yeah,
fine?
that's one of
Yeah.
us.
Next order of business, we have old business before us. We have a memorandum of understanding with DCAS. I believe this is Executive Director Jim Victor.
Yes, and I've also, I'll refer to our
Just
Director
the
of
ones
Research.
that are
We received a draft memorandum of understanding from PCAS, and we're currently in the process of not just reviewing it, but also ensuring that everything that we want to see in terms of data is on the list in that memorandum of understanding, working with research on that. And we expect to have that completed, I guess, in the next week or so, and that our executive agency council will then engage in negotiations with the attorney to be technical.
Any questions on the memorandum of understanding with DCAS?
In general.
We're all familiar with this issue.
Yeah.
Next, we go to the audit symposium for the EEO officers, which is scheduled for March 13th and March 14th. Continue with Executive Director Jim Baker.
Yes. We just recently received notice from DCAS, I would say in the last day or two, that the symposium has been moved now from the March date, which would have started next week, to June with a date undetermined. The reason that it's being moved is because they wish to make some of the sessions in-person sessions, and they want to reach out to a wider audience. So they need additional time to do that.
So it's not,
It's not going to be a March at all.
and we don't have any dates yet.
We don't have any dates. It'll be sometime in June.
And this is instead of our symposium?
Well, initially, they were going to have the symposium in January, and we were going to have a symposium in January. So it made no sense to have two symposiums in January. We said, we would go along with theirs because they have the wider audience. And then they pushed it to March, and now they're pushing it to June. So we're still scheduled to present with them in June. And obviously, it depends on the dates that they select as to when it's, if and when we're going to still be able to participate. But hopefully it will work out, hopefully.
Is there any reason, Commissioner Reese?
Why don't we go back to scheduling our own symposium?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's where we are.
There with our successor.
Yeah, I mean, we just found out about the June date 2 days ago, so,
No, I understand.
Yeah, so
But
we
you've
didn't-
got, so it's now March.
yes.
Why don't you look at May, which gives you 2 months, and figure out whether or not there's something you can do within that. It's still gonna be virtual.
Yes, still be virtual.
And if you want to work done, if they play a role, they'll play a role.
So either look at May or look at, you can't do anything, or look at September. There's no particular reason, I would think, that you can't have a similar audit in September. It's not, to the extent that you're hosting it and you'll have other pieces in it. You could do it following theirs. I just, there's nothing wrong with repeating things, particularly in this area. And so it may well be that you can figure out another twist on what is the same material, and figure out another way of presenting it.
So just so that you understand too, we only have 2 hours of material, which we prepared for the DCAS
Yeah, I mean,
event.
you can participate in the DCAS,
Right.
but then we should also go forward and do our own symposium at the one we did last year.
So, yeah, we would have to create more material. We would have
Oh,
to.
understood, which is why maybe you follow theirs as opposed to trying to rush and precede it. So that you do yours in September or October. But again, I'm repeating myself. There's nothing wrong in repeating some of the same basic ideas and just giving it differently.
Commissioner McCollum?
Is there any issue with the staffing that would be required to put on EEPC's own or to create more content to do one separately than what you had anticipated? Like, I recognize that there's some staffing shortages and stuff. I just want to make sure you have the resources.
So that's a good question, and I'm not exactly sure because I hadn't really contemplated doing our own. We have built up the research department a little bit. From when I came here, it was 1.5 people, and now it's 3, 4.
Sure.
4. So yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully, we would be able to. We would have to sit down and figure out how we were going to approach it. But because it would be remote, it would be manageable in that way. If we had to do things in person, that would be difficult.
It's a matter of like the topics, the speakers, dovetail it in relation to one of our reports that have just been issued or that are upcoming.
If you look at the local law and figure out how you do a report around it as to what you need to do to change the numbers, some thoughts about how you deal with recruitment, or how you deal, maybe recruitment is not as much, but how you deal with promotions, how you deal with equality within promotions, which is not all that simple.
True.
So there are places where we could add to what DCAS is talking about, add to more depth, and maybe some, you should excuse the expression, scholarly or intellectual depth by getting some speakers who've done some research in the area.
Well, my understanding is that the budget only allots for this every 2 years. Is that correct? Like if we do a public forum of some kind every 2 years? So would there, I don't know if there would be money for getting a public.
So if we did it in September, we.
Oh, it would be the
probably
new, right,
have-
that's right.
But also, I think virtual, remote, puts less pressure on the budget that was imagined.
But you still have to compensate to speak some of the speakers that are from outside, so there's some cost to it.
Sometimes, did we compensate those two speakers from last symposium?
We did the one speaker from in.
One.
Not those two.
Like $300 or something.
No, 2,000.
No, we're talking about real compensation.
Oh, fancy.
So nice. I was really thinking about it.
How much?
They only got like 15 minutes.
Wow, she gave us one presentation.
That's nice. As it should. Next, we have any other discussion on the symposium? Do you feel like you have enough clarity as to the role of the board?
Yes, thank you.
Next, we have training of community board members. And this would be Jennifer Shaw, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes. This is a discussion we've had ongoing for quite some time now. At the board's suggestion, direction last meeting, I drafted a letter to be sent to Natasha Williams requesting that local law 92, which currently requires all city employees to be trained in sexual harassment prevention, and local law 121, which requires biennial age discrimination training, for all city employees as well, to be amended to specifically include community board members and their ability, their responsibility is a better word, to take the training that's offered to all city employees, which is the training that's deployed by DCAS. And that letter was provided to you as well. If there is revisions or anything that you want to add or take away, that's fine. But that is the letter that was drafted.
Has it been set yet?
No.
Were you waiting for a formal vote or anything?
No, I just was waiting for any feedback because that draft was only drafted like 2 days ago.
And I think it was drafted for your signature.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but, from January 26th till now is more than like a month or a month, 8 weeks. I think for, topics such as that, like legislative submissions, the turnaround should really be a lot quicker, 7, 8 weeks. You know, but I think that maybe other commissioners, but when I speak to the urgency of some of this, and even with the issues that we had on the exit interviews and then council members taking action, we not being able to weigh in, you know, what we have, something that we feel there's consensus on, I think requires the city council, since they themselves, you know, could be, they have their own timetable. Our timetable, if possible, could be a little quicker in this regard, particularly anything dealing with legislation, because then even once it's out in this acknowledgement of receipt, you're still talking about weeks, months, if not much longer before those changes are made, or they may even be made without our input, because good ideas are by a lot of people.
Yeah.
So if we could just be a little, you know, quicker, and if that means that when you send communication to commissioner saying, you know, you have 3 days to get feedback, otherwise, you know, send the feedback, we will assume that's going to be made. And then just make sure I can get your electronic signatures while coming. Commissioner Reese?
My understanding, and I'm putting it out there because I want to be corrected, is that community board members are not employees of the city, but are volunteers
That is
and
correct.
do not receive any compensation.
That is correct.
So in order for them to be included in the requirements that city employees are required, we need to have some changes in the regulations or the resolutions to include all volunteers, I suspect. Or in some manner, just make it clear that we are including community board volunteers. But so I would, to the extent that you're quoting and talking about requirements for city employees, there has to be some statement within there that we're asking it to be extended to this category of volunteers because of what they do dealing with community problems. There has to be a reason why these volunteers are different than other volunteers in our point of view and why we're asking for this inclusion. So I would ask that I think your concern about rewriting it and bringing it to our attention was the right concern. I'm sorry it's taken so long for us to comment, and I apologize.
Oh, no,
for
it's
my
not.
lateness comment, but we
No.
really need some sort of distinction because there are volunteers. I mean, the whole community affairs is full of volunteers, and we're not talking about the ones that are dealing in community affairs and dealing with the
I
other.
think the language here, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the legal language is all paid and unpaid appointees, government or public sector appointees.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we're appointees per diem, but I believe we've all taken the training, the prevention of sexual harassment. If not, I'm sure that we soon will be. There's other, but just appointees.
But we don't want other appointees to be subject to the same training. So we're looking at just community board. So there has to be some piece in this letter.
Anyone doing work on behalf, if JP Morgan Chase private sector employees are subject to city council legislation to take the same training, so should anybody else doing work on behalf of the city.
Yeah.
You know, paid or unpaid. You're appointed by anybody that is a mayor, a city council member, speaker, a borough president, a council member,
No, that's
to
fair.
function on behalf of the city. You should be held responsible to take the.
I don't know who's gonna manage it.
So this,
I mean,
Commissioner
or,
Yeager?
no, I was gonna say, or do we have some sort of provision? So for instance, my job, we have to do trainings every year. Is there a provision that would say, okay, maybe because of management purposes, okay, maybe we don't do the city training, but we have been trained, or we can show proof that we did have sexual harassment training or diversity inclusion training. Because I do all of that stuff for my job.
But in the private sector, the sexual harassment training, I think, is the one that's provided by the
But
Commission of Human Rights.
So-
They print their certificate of completion on.
Right, so local law 92 is part of a whole packet of laws that were passed in 2018 to
Right.
try to prevent sexual harassment. Local law 92 is the provision that requires city employees to be trained. There is another local law, I forget which number it was, that requires all New York City employees, private or public. And if you're private, then you would take CCHR training or a training offered by your employer. We are fine accepting that, you know, in terms of sexual harassment, but there's no, there's no guarantee that the people who are on the boards are, maybe they're not employed, so maybe they're not required to take the
Right,
training.
no, of course. No, what I was saying is that if we could say like, so if they are employed, so like, let's say I was on a community board and now all of a sudden it says we're required to do the training and I can bring forth like through my employment, I've actually trained, like I'm trained annually on these things. Could that be done to show as proof so that the burden of actually conducting all the trainings is not so onerous on the agencies? Because now we're adding,
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
City
We are
council,
adding
the
it.
city
Yeah.
council could,
Right.
like for in the legal profession, you have to take continuing education
Right.
credits. There's some that are approved and not approved.
Right.
The city council could decide. So I think the best tack for that, and again, this is something they figure out, you could make mention to it, but
Yeah,
conflicts of interest board. Conflicts of interest training is mandatory of community board members, I suspect, I believe, 2 years. Someone could correct me if you have information otherwise, but that's a good model to use. Something like that, conflicts of interest training, anyone doing this business on behalf of the city. Such as
I mean, or with the,
Commissioner.
go ahead.
just continuing on this, we'd spoken, briefly, well, I thought about it briefly at the last meeting, which, we didn't get to talk about what I'd love to talk about here. I think that as this board, we should all do training, not just the sexual harassment training, but I think probably equity and inclusion training. I think that given the nature of who we are and what we do, it only makes sense to be the lead, take the lead and make sure that we understand, especially as we're in these conversations, what the best practices are.
They were
Absolutely.
reversed.
I think the Commissioner of Human Rights has a total of maybe 5 trainings, is that are legally derived? There's Islamophobia, or there's one on transphobia, Islamophobia, cisgender, there's a variety of different trainings that, but I agree that if we're provided with a list of what's, available now, the commissioners could have that, something that the commissioners could look at. I think I mean, several different boards, but I think this board is one of them that I had to submit a copy of the certificate on the correction of sexual harassment. Is that correct? You have one of my certificates on file?
Yes, I do.
So I suspect that at some point you have the certificate of the other commissioners on file, or will subsequently have it on file. I see some people nodding their head no, so.
Well, I'm just
We will.
looking, I'm not even.
I
nodding.
don't, I would remember that.
No, we didn't get it
Yeah.
yet.
Oh,
In
okay,
the
okay.
Same way
I'm
that,
not sure either yet.
I mean, I've been communicated to comply and submit that, I'm sure in due time. the other
Okay,
commissioners
okay.
will be in that cycle of training. I believe that's the only one that this board has been asked to.
There's a whole host of training if you.
Well, yeah, I think we want to start with the ones that by law are required. Commissioner Bruce?
Have we had that conflict of interest board things given to us, so we have to sign it?
I think that's gonna be happening soon. Michael is coordinating the annual disclosure form.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's supposed to be giving them to you today. I suspect he went to go get them.
Oh, okay, that's why I was asking, because I had forgotten it, and I love doing it.
Commissioner Fowler?
Yeah, that conflict of interest board, that's the state one. What, so I did one recently, it was like, I feel like there were state
There's a
entities.
state one in the city.
Yeah,
Oh.
they use two different ones.
I'm-
It's the same.
Yes, Nicosi, I'm sorry, I did not warn you. If I had warned you, I did not know what the answer would
Right.
be.
Did the state one like 3 months ago. Okay.
Any other comments on section C, section 4, with regard to community board training?
I did want to mention that, about a month or so ago, I sent a letter to the, borough president of the Bronx, asking if she would meet with us to discuss training of community board members,
Mm.
and I never received a response. So I was wondering if there was something else I should do
The
to,
letter was to the borough president.
yes,
Did it copy the deputy borough president of general?
I did copy the deputy borough.
I could follow up with Justin Cortez with the chief of staff.
Okay.
Right, or I know Nicole, you know, Commissioner Giroy, you know, we have relationships in that office.
How did you see?
But send me the letters and maybe to Commissioner Giroy, we can follow up.
And I know they just hired the community board, the person who's director of community board just came on board as well, so it may be because of the, vacancy, there's a gap.
Was it Tom Lucania?
No, it's Sierra Gannon, that was on the top, that's why I just showed you the. Hold on, yes, Sierra Gannon, because it's in person. Did you send it to her?
No, I sent it to Tom Lucania because we just spoke less than a month ago.
Yeah, well, she's director of community board.
Okay.
Hold on, and then also there was an article recently that they're having a time of recruiting people. Yeah, for community boards, yeah,
Having hard time?
yep,
Interesting.
they had to extend, they had
All
to
the community
extend
boards
the
are
date.
just Bronx?
I think it might be all, because I feel like Manhattan might have extended, I know Bronx extended,
Wow.
they've really been trying to push,
Interesting.
yeah. I'm gonna send this to you.
Where was the article?
Thank you.
I'll look it up.
Oh, yeah, I'm reading a lot of rags.
Somewhat historic.
Next.
Yeah.
Next, we have pilot program with city agency to remedy underutilization. Yeah, you're on fire today. To you and Jennifer.
So, I've been having discussions with a couple of different entities regarding, a pilot program that I'd like to have, to work with the city agency on underutilization. And, if we kind of discussed this at the last meeting under new business, what I wanted to do was work with, I guess, selected the Department of Transportation to see if they'd be willing to have us come in and kind of, look through their processes in detail to see what's working and what's not working with respect to underutilization. We, the goal is that as we continue to make recommendations in our research reports, I want to make sure they're working. I want to make sure they make sense. And we're too small of an agency to test it out. I wanted to see that we're super large, super small, but somewhere in the middle. And it's the one answer as to what we want to put forward. I think because they sent an email recently, kind of saying, we're looking forward to working with you. It wouldn't be ready to start until May because there's not and that person probably won't get on. But once that person gets on, that person will probably be on working with us closely to effectuate this.
So I'm saying, Commissioner, you,
looking it up, but it was recently brought to my attention that GOT has an insane amount of vacancies.
correct. Correct.
Like, it's like in the hundreds. Like, I want to say, was it 800 or 600? Like, I'm looking it up because it's outrageous.
No, no, you're absolutely right. Commissioner-
I don't know if that impacts the work that we would do with them, but
Commissioner Rich, go ahead.
I don't know.
Have you looked at the Department of Consumer Affairs?
No.
Why don't you look at it? I think transportation is difficult for several different reasons. Not the least of which it has within it some, a good many civil service titles and, I mean, they're doing the bridges. And they're doing painting of the bridges, and there are a whole host of other things like that. Consumer affairs is maybe in some sense a software agency that might be more easier for you to do what you want to do, which is, it doesn't have the same impact. I'm shooting from the hip, so I apologize for that, but it's not gonna have the same impact of other union issues and other tactical issues. I think what you want is model to understand what's going on in hiring or not hiring, and in promotion and not promotion. You need something that's moderate in size and still has the levels. I'm guessing that consumer affairs is a better place to look at it than something that's got engineering and other mechanical issues in it, which is what DOT has.
Right, they already started the process with DOT.
Well,
I think one of the reasons DOT is a good one is that you're talking about is it considered mid-size agency or?
It's considered large.
In our classification, large.
It's considered large.
So it's large with 5,400 employees, $6 billion. In our underutilization report, it came up as underrepresented in important categories of gender and racial ethnic groups. It's the main driver of employment. So it's working to underutilization agencies such as that and show willingness to work with it, helps us really dig into what it means for classified, non-classified, union, non-union, administrative, managerial, crafts, maintenance, engineering, construction. So it gives you a real purview into what insight into what our mandated local law report has shown in terms of underutilization that drives ethnic, gender, racial utilization. So I think that for me was an exciting, other than as well as the fact that they are seem willing to work with us. Which is, at least a start. So, and there's been expressed at least vocal commitments or convenings and summits by their commissioner, Yanis Rodriguez, making pronouncements as to the level of diversifying of the agency he wants to accomplish.
Yeah, equity.
Yeah. Equity, right, yeah, the word escaped. Yeah, the Yanis Rodriguez, the commission, has really come up with a lot of pronouncements around diversity, equity, inclusion as a prime mandate.
Translated Giannis, but I would be.
And the one thing too, Commissioner Reese, is that this agency is, when we met with them, they are doing a lot to try to move the needle on underutilization. So this is not an organization that we would have to start from ground zero and try to build up. This is one that's already trying to do. Having said that, I will also look at Department of Consumer Affairs and see.
In case it doesn't happen. You need to have a backup, because otherwise you will spend your time and not be anywhere closer to doing what you want to do as model. I think we want to look at, I mean, that's just one that comes to mind, but, and it too probably it doesn't have the same technical problems in my mind as that does. And if you want the answer to some of the technical problems, we were talking beforehand when Jean said she was the first female engineer hired by the MTA. If what you're looking at is the engineering title and what you have are still a whole lot of minorities and females not going into getting that education, you're still going to have, no matter whatever your commitment is to dealing with underutilization, you can't recruit what doesn't exist. And so I'm not sure at the end of the day that you end up
I think,
with getting the information that you want.
I think the mandate of this commission though is not, you can't recruit what's not there. But as little Black women or men, Latinos, Asians, any job group, the ones that are there, that are applying, are not applying. So to the extent that that is a fact still in our workforce, that's something that working on an organization as large as the DOT will give you enough of a whole lot to look into. Because there's just a lot there in terms of numbers of employees.
I'm back to saying you need a backup.
Any other questions, comments on the pilot program, city agency to everybody in the organization? I don't see that, so in terms of old business, I know that there were several letters to OMB around the PEG and around the last thing. Have they officially responded to us in writing or any meetings or? I
So-
just wanted to know, I wanted to make sure we close that loop.
Yeah.
on OMB.
So we had a meeting this week with OMB and with the mayor's office. Specifically the first deputy mayor, Michael Cedillo. And
First deputy commissioner, that's right?
first deputy commissioner, yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke. And the question is whether they, they wanted to ask the agency where the agency felt additional cuts could be made to the budget. And my response to that was that, of course, we're a small agency. There's really no fat left to cut. And the contributions that I believe that the agency is making towards saving money, cost savings for the city relate to the fact that we are, actively collaborating with agencies like DCAS to make sure that we're not duplicating projects. For example, if, we determined that we wanted to do a study on pay equity and DCAS was already conducting a study on pay equity, it would really make no sense to have two agencies conducting the same study using the same data. We can save money by understanding what they're doing and then, focusing our attention on something else that could be just as pressing. And then I also provided the example that, we because we don't have a lot of funds for various things, for example, we've noticed, I'll give you two examples. We've noticed during the audits, when we've launched the audits, we've been getting what I believe are a large number of agencies who are requesting an exemption or a extension of time in terms of getting started because they do not have the people to get started with. So I mentioned this to at this meeting that we had this week as an instance of the cuts are beginning to show in terms of how the agencies are able to respond to an audit. And the concern that I have is that if the agencies are not able to respond to the audit because they have no one there and the people that are there don't know where to find anything or to where you even start to provide documents to fulfill the audit, then what are they doing in terms of their own EEO programs within their agencies? And that should be a concern because if the city is trying to save money on funding the EEO offices, then they are taking a risk that could result in millions of dollars of litigation costs. So I mentioned that as what we are doing, we are trying to elevate that issue to the right people, to let them know that, you know, the cuts are having this impact. And lastly, one of the issues that we are encountering here is we have a system, a database system that may no longer be supported, may require some additional funding in terms of keeping it up to date. Or, you know, is this a time to look for another system that might better fit our needs? So rather than, you know, spending $80,000 on a new system, which is what I believe the last system cost, you know, I suggested that we start to look in-house and see if we could possibly partner with OTI to design our own software. I don't believe it's extremely difficult, but we just need a couple of people that would be able to be detached from OTI to help us on a part-time basis to get this going. So these issues were kind of questioned by OMB in terms of they would want to see more information around that, and they wanted to get a better sense as to whether or not this was more of a cost avoidance matter as opposed to a savings. So that's where the conversations kind of ended. I believe I impressed upon them that we really had nothing further to cut. And the mayor's office, I think, was satisfied with that. OMB had these two additional questions about collaborating with other agencies and also about the cost avoidance versus cost savings. That's kind of how it is. So my plan is between today and tomorrow to send them a letter, kind of detailing it out in letter format to confirm what I said and to see where we go from there. The other issue that we have on the table is that we lost, during the last 2 years of these pegs, we lost $104,000 and 2 positions. I'm fighting to get 1 position back, which may occur, but I won't know until the end of this month, whether or not I can get the position back. In the meantime, I had gotten approval to post a position. We have 66 resumes sitting in the system waiting to be selected for interviews.
When you talk to them about the non-response because there weren't any EEO officers there, was there any reaction at all from OMB? Did they appear to care that could lead to potential litigation / avoidance rather than savings?
From my perspective, when we had this meeting remotely, so we were looking on the screens, I felt that we understood because there was a lot of nodding. So I thought, you know, by the end of the call that we were all going to be on the same page. So, but I wasn't entirely sure about that. And Russell, you can chime in too, because Russell was on the call. And say what your perspective was.
I guess what I would say is clearly in writing your letter, I would emphasize that it's creating a risk to the city. It's not avoidance, it's the creation of a risk to the city, because unless there are officers in there to do several things. One of the things the EO officer does is I assume, is to sit there and listen to people who come in with complaints and can therefore mediate that complaint and save it from being escalated. And without that EO officer or someone sitting with that role, you're really increasing a risk for several different things: sexual harassment, discrimination, pay disparity. There are a whole host of things in there. And I would amplify that. You know better than I, but I would amplify that.
Oh, I agree. The other question, so a few things. How much does because what I feel like the last maybe week or two, there's been a lot of conversation about the vacancy rate for the city. Like, how much does not, like the EEO officer, is that like falling kind of into that category of, you know, the vacancies that we have? And then the other thing I'm thinking is that how much money, so they're saying that we need to cut but then there's all these vacancies. So it's like, where's the money going with the vacancies that we have? Because my thing is, there's a ton of openings where people aren't getting paid. That money is somewhere for those lines. So why can't that help offset the cost of agencies that really can't afford to have those cuts? I mean,
We will call it the chess game that OMB plays.
right, because I'm like, to me, it doesn't, like, we gotta make it make sense, like, we can't, like, yesterday at the State of the City, the speaker talked about, council members going out and encouraging people to apply for city jobs, civil service tests, so it's like we're pushing hiring and also cutting, like, it just, it's not.
But when we hire, there is always a lag. We talked about this.
Well, that's
before
what
the
they
meeting.
talked about, the lag too, and they've
The
been
lag
addressing.
is
the
there
months.
because the lag is there because I don't have to allot the dollars until the person comes through the door.
Right.
And so all of that is part of the way the budgeting is done.
Right, but
I would be a millionaire if I knew the answer to your question.
No, but but it's because they've been talking about the lag and they're talking about how they love good people. They don't do it to the lag. Like you're taking 4 or 5 months. I know people who are changing agencies and it's taking like months to do
get
that.
transfers. Yes.
And it's like we gotta fix this. And then you wonder why you have all nobody's coming to work for the city. You can't put people through loops like that, but just, like I said, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
And I'm not even sure it's interesting.
Right, it's
Just is.
yeah.
Commissioner O'Connell?
Yeah, I just was thinking, one last thing, that Commissioner Reese had talked about, how we could prevent lawsuits and blah, blah, blah. And I think also,
And the
We
lawsuit's
could-
already happening.
right, there's also a retention issue, right? So like if I have an issue at my job and this person is like harassing me and making comments, if
Yeah.
there's no one for me to go to, the thing that I do is leave. So then at a workforce that's already, right, the workforce that's already, bleeding people.
That goes to exit interviews, and that goes to mandating exit interviews. If you really want to find out what's happening, you need those exit interviews.
That too.
And we need to have access to them so
Mhm.
that we know, that's gonna be a portion of the answer to the question that we need to answer. And that is, the turnover is part of it, and why the turnover?
Oh, okay. Yeah. But it sounds like what you're saying, is that everybody, it looks like people agreed. And so like the tone of the letter is, we all agreed, so let's blah, blah, blah.
We just want them to restore us back to
Mhm.
the position. Put us in a better position. So go to my next topic, which is still old business, but it's not calendar community. The letter to Commissioner Natasha Williams. We outlined what our actual needs were. Was there a response from the commissioner's office? I mean, from the council.
City council.
It wasn't sent yet. It's
The letter to Commissioner, to Council Member Natasha Williams?
takes care.
Oh, hasn't been sent yet?
About the budget?
Yeah, remember, as a follow-up to our meeting like 3 months ago, 4 months ago, she wanted from us.
Oh, that letter.
Yeah, that letter.
I have never heard anything. Yeah, that letter.
When we don't hear back from letters, like in a couple of weeks, just
Okay,
flag it
okay.
and bump it back up to us, so that doesn't just get lost in the ether. Can you resend the letter, email, so you want to bump it back up to them in terms of if it got lost or not anything?
Or just send a follow-up letter that says, we have not gotten a response to our letter, which is enclosed herein.
Because they are beginning budget negotiations.
Mm.
So this letter-
Absolutely.
Then, the last thing we want is this.
To get lost.
And then maybe see if we can, get on the calendar again for a meeting to discuss the letter that we sent them and the proposed, reason for the budget increase. And they may have questions for us. Next, we have, the research update.
No, you missed number 5.
Oh, the audit, sorry, the audit update. Back to Jennifer Shaw.
This is very brief. I just wanted to keep the board apprised of where we stood in terms of the 2022 audits and the 2023 audits. 2022, we discussed, we're wrapping it up. We only have about 10 agencies left in compliance monitoring. 2023 audits, we have launched 25 of them. We sent out the picks. There was a few extensions, but for the most part, we received them back and our analysts are starting to draft their preliminary findings. So I'm hoping to get preliminaries and finals out within the next few months so that that can be on the next, well, not the next one, but probably in May or farther, the agenda for resolutions so that we can get them into compliance monitoring so we can still make our goal of 70 this year.
Terrific.
That's it. Just wanted to keep you updated.
Absolutely terrific.
Next we have research update. Russell's on board.
Yeah, not too much. So
Not too much. You've
the
been busy since the last.
the CUNY report is done. It's just literally a question now of formatting it to upload to the city's DARIS system.
I have to recuse myself for anything doing. Sorry.
So there's literally just because there's requirements that the city's system have, but the content of the report is done.
Can you share at least the executive summary of the CUNY report with the commissioners again, just because it's been a while since many of us probably read it.
Sure.
We need to know what's going up before it goes up.
So, and I'll reshare it when it's in its final version. First of all, CUNY is different because their data is warehoused in their own internal systems. We don't get from them what we get from the city. So we are very limited in what we're able to report on. They choose what to give us, and it's unclear to me whether we have the possibility of compelling them to give more. So the report is pretty basic. Their rates of underutilization and corrective actions compared to many city agencies is pretty good. There's not nearly as much, it seems, in terms of the scope as compared to the city. So the report highlights that there's some underutilization of Asians at some of the colleges and modest, very minimal underutilization of women, but there is considerable job segregation also, which is not unique to CUNY. That's something that we know exists at employers across the country. And so the findings and the recommendations focus on some of the things that you all had just talked about, that recruitment is certainly important, but probably more needs to be done about retention. And CUNY does have an exit interview, or an exit survey, I should say, system that they use with an outside vendor. And so potentially down the road in future reports, we may be able to work with them to sort of explore that. So the report is pretty basic and doesn't have a rich amount of data. So I would actually talk more moving forward that starting with the data that we're going to request for this year, we're going to ask for more, and whether they give it to us, I can't say, but we don't, for example, have data on vacancies, on hiring, on promotions, or those kinds of things. And we have already brought up the possibility of getting it in the future. We weren't told no, but we weren't told yes either. And so we'll have to begin those negotiations with them sometime in the next month.
Questions, comments?
Thank you.
Next, we stay with Russell to discuss local law 13 report on the city's workforce.
Right. So you had all received a draft about 3 weeks ago of the report on the municipal workforce. DCAS also has it. I asked them to get us any feedback or questions by today. I haven't heard from them yet. So pending comments or review of the board or of DCAS, it will be ready to go within a matter of a week or two, depending on, I haven't gotten any feedback. So if that means it's perfect, then that's fine by me. But,
I'll look.
Review this.
You did send
okay.
it. You sent it a while.
What
ago.
are the headlines?
So the headlines are basically is that underutilization was roughly the same in 2022 as it was in 2021. Some modest changes, but nothing huge. And hiring in jobs with underutilization tends to perpetuate it. So not only does it already exist, but similar to the conclusion that you had pointed out from the report last year is that the people that they're hiring look an awful lot like the people that are already in that particular job group. Another interesting finding is that separations seem to be increasing substantially for women and Black people in particular. And I think the main highlight, frankly, if you look at the number of people, the degree of the underutilization, the story is Black people. It's the extent to which Black people are underutilized in New York City is astronomical compared to any of the other groups that we're looking at. Not to say that it's not a concern for the other groups, but the sheer numbers is just, it's huge. It's huge. The other thing that I would add is, and I had discussed this at previous meetings, this is not like it for local law 13. This report is what I hope to produce each year as sort of a foundational or core report. And then later this year, we will hope to do 1 to 3 more on other specific areas within the local law 13 universe. So for example, since the availability estimates have not been updated in some time, we're going to go through the exercise of like doing that ourselves and seeing is what the city is saying the labor market availability is that accurate considering they haven't been updated in almost 10 years. So that's one thing that we're going to be doing this year in addition to this.
And then we have the EPC annual report. Jean Victor?
No, that's also herself.
So you would also receive a draft of the annual report with the packet that Jen sent on Friday. So if you all have a chance to look at that,
Not yet.
it is short. The old one used to be in the hundreds of pages. This one, we're going to get down to about 20.
All right, then I'll read it.
So if you all have an opportunity, maybe in the next week, possibly to look at it and provide
Get back
feedback.
to you.
Was
Yeah,
that in the SharePoint or was that?
No, that was in my email.
from last Friday.
Last Friday.
And we can resend it. If you can't find it, just reach out to me and I can
Send it to
send
me.
it back. Yeah.
Don't
Don't send it to me again.
Please don't.
If you sent it, I should have it.
Yeah, you can send it again. So,
She's like, send it again.
Okay.
No, I have it. I've seen mine. You don't have to send anything. to me.
J.E.
Yeah,
shop.
okay.
I don't have nothing from you.
On Friday?
Friday at
3rd.
3:30.
next, is there anything else on this order of business, EPC annual report? If none, can we get a motion to adjourn public session to go into executive
So
session?
moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
by Commissioner Reese, we have a second by Commissioner Powell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, hearing none, the motion passes. We're now exited from public session.